children for 12 years, going to stop. So I never met Roger in human skin and flesh persona, and he's very much alive for me. So I feel like I know him. And I want to read this quote by George Bernard Shaw. It says, "I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is sort of a splendid torch, which I have a hold of for the moment. And I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it over to future generations." And that seems to me, it embodies Roger's life and his legacy. So I'm going to light a candle. And for me, a candle represents not just light, but there's thunder going on here. You can hear, okay, I think Roger approves. Hopefully that's an approval. But so make Roger's light continue to shine on this room, and all who knew him and all who will know him through those who knew him. I'm sitting here looking, and I know you who are out on the computer can't see it, but right here, there's a big saying on the wall that says, "Balance is core to your wellness." And thinking about balance, I sort of think, and particularly, those who have had a stroke or any injury, and the most important thing is kind of finding that balance again. And also when someone dies, kind of the equilibrium of our lives gets kind of knocked out of whack. And, particularly when it's a sudden death. And I try not to use the word loss or passed, because Roger died, and I believe, that's his physical form, but when someone dies suddenly, first there's that shock aspect to it that can't even be real. And that even happens after someone has been sick for a long time with us, but particularly, it can't be real. And, we think to what is the last conversation, I had with him, and then analyzing that. And then we can go into some, magical thinking. Had I, called him that day, maybe, blah, blah, so all of those, thoughts can come into being. And our relationship with someone does not end when they die. Just the physical relationship, but relationships are so much deeper than just the physical aspect. And sort of like the grief journey is learning how to, first of all, reconcile what intellectually we know that, someone died, but, having our hearts catch up, which is, I think, a lifelong journey, and to not be afraid of the pain. So I invite you to just think of when you first heard that Roger died, where in your body did you feel that? Think about that. It's a physical thing. And kind of breathe into that feeling. And the path, the grief journey really is learning how to reconcile, as I said, the intellectual with, the spirit. And I was just reminded that his cousin, right, Cheryl, your cousin spoke that he was into the book. Now I'm a chaplain, I'm an ordained person, so I try not to go to the book too much because Some of my favorite people I work with are atheist, agnostic. My theology is one God, many names. So some people can connect to that God through music, through art, through 12-step programs, through a group like this, and through, the book. And I think we're all familiar with the 23rd Psalm. I said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. And the line I like to point out is where it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Yea, though I walk through. Now, the operative word there is through. It doesn't say, yea, though I'm stuck in. Yea, though I'm never getting out. And when someone is grieving, what can cause extra problems is thinking that how I am feeling today, projecting to how's it going to be at the group in August, and how's it going to be in September, and how's it going to be, trying to imagine that future grief that is not real. And I call that optional grief. So if I catch myself starting to, think about how I'm going to feel about something in the future, I don't know how I'm going to feel, how I'm feeling right now. And it is that passing through, that things change. My sense is, and I didn't know Roger, but did he make you laugh sometimes too? I hope so. If you're laughing, laughter can be a way to express, and tears. I find that crying doesn't get in the way of my talking. It's trying not to cry that gets me kind of bollocksed up. So if I'm, singing at someone's funeral or trying to talk or do something, if I find myself crying, I can cry and snorkel all over myself, but it's actually, trying not to cry. So, cry is very healthy to cry. And also, when someone had such an impact on so many lives, like Roger did, to, how to honor his life. And one way that I find meaningful is just in the morning, upon waking, to say, pause for a moment, say, I dedicate this day in honor of, and fill in the blank, Roger or whoever your loved one is, and to have those actions in your day be a way to lift him up and keep him very much with you. And I find that a very powerful, active way to kind of harness that energy of grieving. The other thing is, and I love that you have a group, because not everybody, I'm sure your friends that were not in the group, this group leader died, they're like, okay, move on, get a puppy, what do you want to do next? Want to go for lunch? People are not trained to really sit kind of in the mud with other people. And it takes a lot of work to be able to do that. And I invite you to find those people in your lives that can do that. So I briefly speaking with Kelly, Kelly's a mud sitter. And so we live in a society that's trying to fix things. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's fix this. Let's not feel this. Let's, talk about something else or think about something else. And, it's okay to sit with awful. Then he died. And particularly as a symbol of a survivor of a stroke who then died. So that brings up all kinds of stuff. Well, if he died, what's going to happen with me? What are my chances? And, and all of that is just important to acknowledge, because you're not the only person that may have had those thoughts. I had those thoughts and I didn't even have a stroke. Imagine. So there was that fear of our own mortality. And like that George Bernard Shaw quote, wanting to, who knows when our time will come, and just to try to live every day as much in the present. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with that Charlie Brown and Snoopy comic where you see their backs. And Charlie Brown says to Snoopy, you know, Snoopy, one day we're going to die. And Snoopy says back to Charlie Brown, yes, but on all others we will not. And that's just something to kind of let sink in, that I am alive today, and what can I do to honor the lives of those who I have known and who have known me, and how to live my life in a way that the world will be enhanced as a result of my being here. And I just want to pause for a second if anyone feels like they would like to share something, or and it is such a small world. You know, when I was saying, Margie, I think that the life that we are living is the reverse side of a tapestry. So, you know, where it's all messy. I don't know if anyone does needlework or things, and it's messy, and there's strings hanging and there's knots. And, you know, on the other side, there might be this beautiful, beautiful flower. I can't see that, you know, that's not the side that I can see. That's bigger than I can even imagine. I think that's about life, that, you know, those messy, messy times, be it having a, you know, stroke or having someone die or any kind of, you know, difficulty, that I can't know what that bigger picture is. And that's okay. You know, I'll leave that to the universe, you know, to someone else. But just anyone out there in Zoom like to share something? Particularly someone that's saying to themselves, not me, but let someone else do it. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
That's me. I knew this is very, very, very important, and we knew we wanted to do a memorial service as soon as we heard. But as the day has gone by waiting for this to start, I've just been sick because it feels so final. It feels like if we go past this, people are going to start forgetting Roger. And I can't forget him. And I don't know how to get past that.
Yeah, and maybe the thing is, you know, not to get past that, to allow yourself to just sit with that fear, just to sit with that. And are you, you know, I'm not going to forget Roger, and I never even met him. You know, met him, so I can only imagine for you. And as a group too, try to see, well, how do we honor? Is there some piece of his clothing, or some, you want to light a candle before, you know, each group, or, you know, what will be a way to honor him among the group, also allowing Ruvain and Leah to, you know, move the group forward, not trying to just recreate Roger, but to, you know, be themselves in that. So just because, and I wish you, you know, all the success, and I invite you just to be yourselves. I was saying to them before things started, it's really exhausting trying to be somebody else, you know, particularly someone that has died, because all of a sudden they become even more, you know, exalted in our minds. So I would say the more successful and creative and opening and welcoming this group is, will only elevate Roger's memory, not, you know, kind of be stomping on it. You know, I know that whenever I went on vacation, when I was doing professional singing, I always made sure that I replaced myself with someone who was even better than me. You would think that, no, you want to replace yourself with someone that's not as good, so they'll appreciate. But, you know, it's not true. I want people to have the best possible experience and not be afraid. But speaking of the word fear, particularly when someone dies, and when someone dies young, there is that fear and thinking about my own death. I happen to work in hospice, so I'm constantly, my kids are like sick of me already. So where did I find that George Bernard Shaw quote? That's in my folder of things I want read at my funeral. So I'm already at my plot, so I live in the land of, I know I'm gonna die. Most of us do not live there, and that's a good thing. But also knowing really how brief this life is a gift. I don't take anything too seriously. There's a little bit of traffic, I'm in line at the supermarket. Not such a big deal. Anyone else care to share something?
Can you guys hear me? I want to get emotional because I'm a big crybaby. When it first happened, everyone called me and asked me, was I okay? Because Roger was close to me. I knew Roger close and intimately. I knew he was a son of a pastor. I knew he held a mantle in his family where he had to be perfect. His education, there was no room for error. I talked to Roger about those things, knowing that his main thing was pleasing his mother and father and doing everything he could do for his son. In spite of everything, he made sure his family would not hit the ground. I told Roger, because I felt I could never fill his shoes, but I realized, like he told me, I said, Roger, God gave you this mantle because this is your church. And I would always tell him, God gave you a ministry, and these are the sheep and the people he wants you to lead. Even though you're not behind a pulpit like your father, he's giving you people that only you can reach. And I would always let Roger know, because he held so much weight at work where people didn't know what he was going through, and having to still perform at that extended level in spite of having 2 strokes, and still trying to manage his bills and going home alone, going through depression alone, getting undressed alone. And I told Roger, you give me so much encouragement, because with these groups, and I thank you guys who are leading it, most of the groups, everyone's divorced or separated. And I told my wife, I don't want that to happen much with us, because we're going on 11 years. This is not easy. And I realized men don't talk. And I told Roger, like he said, with depression, I want to get to a place, especially for men, where we talk and we can be vulnerable and we can cry. And we don't have to be perfect, and we don't have to be everybody's Superman. We sometimes want to just lay in our mamas and sisters' chests and just cry, because we can't get back what we lost. So I'm making sure I honor Roger in the midst of this, thinking he had to perform before he can grieve, that he had to be Superman for everybody else, in the midst of him taking so many hits. So I'm going to make sure I lean on all of y'all, get close to you, because I'm not going to try to do this by myself this time. I've been in ministry for 30 years. So I know what it is. I'm going to make sure I'm going to lean on every one of you to make sure this is the most powerful moving group that we reach every race, every nationality, every gender, to let people know this is a place where you can come and let it all out. People need to know I can come here and be mad. I can come here and be frustrated. I can come here and say, why is this happening? Everyone needs that. So I thank God. God wastes nothing, you guys. He wastes nothing. This didn't catch him by surprise. And the only thing he's going to do now, he's telling us we all got to level up and make sure everyone's represented, even on the board, with Kelly and them getting there. Now that they got people that survive and are survivors that can give you a voice of what we go through mentally. And I thank God for it.
Thank you. And I know, I don't know, but I somewhat know that one has had a stroke, expressing oneself changes, the ability to express oneself. So like a normal go-to or thing that I would say is to, write a letter to Roger, things that you would want to tell him. But then when I was having that thought, not everyone's kind of brain to hand function is, at a level that might work for you. So it's some kind of an expressive art. Is it just taking some, quiet time? Is it, perhaps planting something in your garden that might, pop back up each year, something you can nurture? So ways to keep Roger's memory alive, and also to go on living. It's also okay if you were not super affected, by Roger's death. I can't imagine that that's true for anyone that chose to be on here, but there may be other members of the group that were more tangential members, or that just, dialed in, and, everyone grieves in their own way, and that's okay. So I know there's another program planned after I speak. So. I thought there was like a service or something planned, no?
I figured that would just go on if one wants to speak.
Yeah.
And the group can open up, if they want to give response, and just open the floor.
Okay, good, because I would love to hear, from you, and also you have not met as your group to support you in, your stroke support. So it would be not my intention. I would love for you to be able to get that support tonight, in addition to whatever grief support that you need, to check in and, say even like, what is it like to grieve, having survived a stroke? How is that different in your body, in your mind, in your spirit?
Hey, Donna, I do have
Yes.
one question. I don't know about anybody else, but could you touch on anger? Because I'm mad. I'm mad that such awful people in this world are thriving and Roger's gone. And it's really hard for me to get over the anger.
Yeah, but even when you're saying that, Kelly, and getting over, like, I again invite you, allow you to like be angry. I mean, not only am I angry that other people, not that I wish anyone ill will, but also it's normal to be angry at him. Like, how dare you go and die on me? The nerve. That's a normal way to think. And I think that's also that grief manifests itself in anger. I see it often that people become mad at the doctor, mad at the, whatever, mad at me. And I think that's a normal part of it. And I know there were those Kubler-Ross, stages of grief, but those stages of grief are not stages of mourning. So that like denial, that really, those are really meant for someone who has received a diagnosis. It doesn't, that relates to, how people react to that. It does not relate to, the grief journey. And there isn't, a book that says, this is how, grieving 101, for the first 3 days, you're going to, do this, that, and the other. And often when I speak with people about grief, if you can imagine that you've had an arm amputated, maybe your right or your left arm, one of your arms has been amputated. You would probably be in the hospital for a while, maybe the emergency room, then the ICU, and then maybe a step-down unit, and then you might be in inpatient rehab for a while. And my sense is Roger died in end of May or beginning of June. No, end of May. So as far as like on that grief journey, you guys are probably still in inpatient rehab, so to speak, in your grieving. And it's in an inpatient rehab where you're going to learn how to, run a group without Roger, how to drive your car without him in your life, how to, talk about what's going on with you when he was the one that you would talk to. How do I have a relationship like that? And, moving forward, learning how to, live your life with a profound presence missing. And also with a leader of the group cannot help but be like a father figure, so when the leader of a group, dies, it can also bring up the death of my, parent or, elder or something like that. It's all, related. So I don't know, for you, if when he died, it, call it picking the scab of any previous death you may have, encountered. And, it sucks. I mean, it really grief is just kind of messy and dirty. And again, we live in this quick fix society. We want to be able to, we get mad if, the email doesn't go through in like under 3 seconds. And grief is not something that can just be fixed. It's something that we can just learn to live with. And I can grieve and also, go out and exercise and laugh with my friends and sleep, those things. It's also learning how to, live with this feeling and also be able to experience life. And that just takes time to kind of figure out and, give yourself permission to just be wherever you're at.
Kelly, you hear me? I just saw my therapist yesterday. My father died first, and then Roger. And I told her I was angry. And then I just started school, and I felt I wanted to be depressed, not do nothing. So I'm doing all this stuff in the midst of me being angry. But what kept me going was seeing, like you said, how Roger did in the midst of his stroke, still graduating. So I'm very angry. And then with me and my brother, my father was cremated. So there was no service, no nothing, no closure, it was just that. So I felt like that was robbed, and then feeling like, okay, we can't be there to honor Roger at his homegoing. So I felt like I was robbed twice. So I get the anger. But I'm learning talk therapy works by me being able to say that to a safe place and knowing this will pass. But I need to be able to say, yes, I'm angry, but I'm going to still go on. But I got to be able to say I'm angry because I done lost, like you said, my father. Now Roger, like a big brother and a leader. And then I knew, okay, I'm always, who's going to take over? And I wasn't trying to volunteer, not trying to say nothing, but I knew, I told him, I knew it was coming. But you said I was angry, but I already knew you and your wife are going to have to take this over. So I'm learning we need to be able to talk things through. So it's okay for you to say that, Kelly.
I would say when I heard about Roger's death, it was triggering. And the reason why is because it made me think of the day he had his stroke. So it just brought back all those emotions, and to know that Roger was alone and he passed away. Could somebody help him? Had somebody called him? Why didn't anybody know? It brought up all of those emotions. I didn't know Roger well. So, but when I did see him, he was always saying, how are you doing? Very welcoming, And so when you hear, like Kelly said, well, why would someone who is so good, who's trying to do so much for others, why did he have to go? And go like that? It just makes you wonder, it makes you wonder. Then coming here, I kept thinking, no, he's really not gone. He's really, I don't know. I don't know, what I was thinking, but him being gone, this young, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so interesting, like in, coming up the elevator to get here. Wouldn't have been a crazy thought to think, well, maybe he'll be there, because we think like that. We think like that. It's interesting, my grandmother died maybe 30 years ago, and every now and again, I deserve to call her.
I have a she died years ago. I have voicemails from her saved on my phone.
Yeah, and that's totally normal to save, voicemails, from Roger, if Roger still has his, voicemail set up, if you want to call him a message for him. Any of that. Who else? Anyone who hasn't?
I wanted to share. So for me, I was trying to remember what my first reaction was. So when it was sent in the Slack group, I didn't look at my phone. And then I had several messages coming from all my students, so many of my students who graduated years ago saying, "Did you see the Slack group? It's unreal, it's unbelievable." And I didn't know what they're talking about yet, because I didn't open my Slack group. I started phone buzzing, and my students usually don't text me unless it's so urgent. So it was buzzing, and I was in between a meeting, and then I opened the Slack, and it just felt unbelievable and unreal. So I'll say I'm one of those people, I still can't imagine that he's not here. I feel like he's just not present now. And we are talking about him, but I still can't imagine. I haven't digested the entire information of him not being around. But I think what reminded me about all the texts coming in was the community that we created. People who graduated left 4 or 5 years ago were still in touch, saying that they can't believe it. They saw it on Facebook, they saw it on Slack. It's such a wonderful community that we created, and it was extremely welcoming. And one thing that I really, really appreciate about Roger is it was so easy for him to have difficult conversations. I'll say that right. It was just easy, the ease with which he would have difficult conversations and hold a safe space, share your thoughts and opinions was great. And I've had multiple conversations we were trying to come to a consensus in terms of, what we want for the group and where this is going and heading in terms of the thought process. And it's very evident with the way he actually was a leader. So for many of us, we know that the Young and the Restless was actually, before it was the Young and the Restless, it was a young stroke support group with a hospital, not Emory, but a hospital. And the hospital had its own agenda. And here I see some of my students graduated who are joining here. Hi, Justin. So the hospital had their own agenda of running the group a certain way, getting in the guest speakers a certain way. This was back in 2019, I believe. That's when I first met Roger and Kelly. And I was a naive faculty member doing my research. And I'm directly considered that we would all still support groups in Atlanta. And I recruited him and several individuals in my research study. And 2 years later, I remembered him is because of his infectious personality, and I wanted to re-recruit for a different research study. And I called him and I said, "Do you want to participate in this study? And do you have members who would be interested in participating in the study?" And that's when he mentioned that he's no longer with the group. They meet, I think they started meeting in IHOP or some other restaurant outside. It was really difficult to sustain. And he said, "Would you be interested to co-partner with us and let Emory be the face of it, and we could use the space to meet in person?" So again, that clearly shows how easy it was for him to step away from something that was not serving for him and his community. And it was really important. It was important to take that hard decision. It may not have been very easy, but he did do that very effectively. And then the pandemic happened. We had some access issues at Emory in terms of how will survivors get to the place where we want to get to in a safe and effective manner. And then he met the leaders at physical therapy. I don't know the story. I would love to hear the story, actually. But again, that was, and then he reinstated meeting in person here in May. So very, very effective. At least, and what I did, I went through all my email conversations with him and all my chats with him. It's my way of remembering chat and when chat last and how I was exchanging messages of like sending small snippets of my toddler and he would say some funny things regarding it. So it was just nice, fun, memorable memories of him. And I can't still believe he's not there. So, so it's very difficult for me to be sad or angry is because I can't, it's unreal for me.
What has been meaningful and helpful has been rituals, some sort of ceremony or ritual around that to just kind of mark the death and closure. So, you know, that was, and if she hasn't been able to attend, even like with your dad, he didn't have a service, he's like, you know, still floating somewhere, you know, so, you know, you can come up with something. And as you were talking, Margie, I was also thinking that maybe you plant a tree or there's some kind of sculpture that can be dedicated at Emory or someplace meaningful where those of you who were not able to attend a funeral or service, or if there wasn't one, you can make one yourself. And, you know, talking about anger, when you were speaking about anger, anger is energy, if you think about it. And those feelings that can be interpreted as anger and also perhaps be reinterpreted as sort of extra energy to be able to go forth and make a difference, do some positive thing. I mean, I found that with nervousness and being a singer and performing, that I used to almost be paralyzed with, you know, that stage fright, those body sensations. And then I realized, you know, I'm feeling that. What if it's, instead of interpreting it as, you know, fear, I can interpret it as like rocket fuel, that I'm doing something extraordinary. Something extraordinary has happened. You know, Roger, you know, died. So how it's going to take me, like, I need a little extra energy to be able to like get up and out of bed today and to, you know, figure out how to live my life without this huge presence. So, you know, perhaps that energy, that feeling that is, you know, perhaps manifesting itself as anger can also manifest itself as, you know, fire to, you know, carry that torch, you know, that I spoke of earlier. That's just one thought. You can also be angry, and that's fine.
I love that you shared that. For me, it's been inspiring. So when I said I went through all the emails, all the messages that Roger and I exchanged, I felt really inspired. What work that needs to be done for the group and why it's important. We did have really good long conversations, Kelly, Roger, and I, and many team members. We've had conversations of is not out there for individuals who end up having stroke with the medical world, with the rehabilitation world. And one thing that we spoke about was aging in individuals who had stroke when they were young. And how do you have this conversation so many times saying it's difficult to figure out why stroke survivors feel a certain way. Is it because of the stroke itself? Is it because of aging? Because they had stroke when they were so young, and that's something nothing in the medical world really discusses. Everybody goes to a diagnosis, we treat the diagnosis, get back, but not really think about what happens when we age with a certain diagnosis. So I just felt really inspired when I looked at all of this, saying, oh, this is the work that the group needs to do together for moving things ahead.
I have to call Justin and Jason out a little bit. You know that the best way to honor Roger's memory is we've got to start that TikTok account he wanted us to start. He was so gung-ho for us to do TikTok.
We really think we have to, because I think one of Roger's goals was to make our support group more than just Emory, more than just Atlanta, but reaches anyone. And when someone's sitting on their couch or recovering or something, and that's what he wanted, right? And it's pretty cool. Definitely something we have to do. At least something, at least one TikTok. Definitely get to that.
I'd love to read another poem, if I may. Yeah, nothing at all. I want to flip away to the next group. I am I and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way that you always use. Put no difference into your tone. There is no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed, at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the trace of a shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant, is the same that it ever was. There is absolute unbroken continuity. Why should I be I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. And maybe, because I spend so much time with people who are dying, who have kind of one foot in the world to come and one foot in this world, I have a broader sense of kind of the universe and everything. And like what I think is my, life is really just a small piece of that. And I was talking to one of them who had a very interesting sense of what heaven was. People usually think heaven, you see everyone died and all is well. And his idea of heaven and where he thought he was going was to a place where everyone who died is, but also everyone that he was leaving behind on this earth is also going to be there. And everyone who is yet to be, so all those who are not yet born. So in that, his heavenly place was, included everyone. And, perhaps we are all, hanging out in that. And this is just some kind of dream or something. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Certainly not the dream, like life is a dream. Yeah, that's not the dream I was referring to. I'm kind of referring to the nightmare that life can be. And also that, when I was younger, I thought that someone out there was like needs and health and no money problems and no relationship problems and not true. Because we're all, struggling, which is why I think it's so important that these groups, someone, like Roger was willing to, say it like it is, and which opens up the space for, all of us to say, I had that crazy thought too. Oh my God.
I can't help but imagine. So as a group, from the time I've been involved, met twice other than this situation, this meeting. We met twice in person. And the first time we met, then we went into a pandemic. And then the second time we met, Roger died. So it's very difficult for me to just, as you said, like, to see the future, right? Like, and that's my tendency. What is how do I try to envision the future meetings, which I didn't try until Roger died. So yeah, I have nothing to do. It's just unreal. Like, how did those two terrible things happen when we all met together? But I also see the light at the end of the tunnel where I see, what if we didn't meet in person in May? How would the group continue to move forward past it? So it was so necessary. The May meeting was so necessary for us to meet in person. I remember Ruben, when I saw you, I was like, well, you look different with your beard now, because when I first saw you in 2020, you look different without that. So I guess it was so necessary for that meeting to happen. And again, I fear if that didn't, what would have happened? And
the whole group of people really was like a blank canvas, and he not be too quick to fill that canvas in, with oil that who knows what it's going to be. And I invite you to give yourself some time to figure out what